Snoop Dogg faces a shocking moment of disrespect at a luxury restaurant when a waiter insults him over his outfit. But what happens next will blow your mind. Watch as Snoop takes a stand in the face of prejudice and sparks a chain of events that leads to real change. This powerful social experiment shows that respect should never be conditional, and one person's actions can make a world of difference. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and please complete our 1,000 subscribers for more inspiring stories. It was a typical evening, and the upscale restaurant was bustling with patrons, all dressed in their finest attire. Yet when Snoop Dogg walked in, the atmosphere suddenly shifted. The famous rapper, known for his iconic style, wasn't dressed in the usual designer clothes you'd expect from a celebrity dining in a high-end restaurant. Instead, he wore a simple black hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. His look was comfortable, casual, nothing extravagant, just the way Snoop liked it. As he walked through the door, heads turned. Some patrons whispered to each other, clearly surprised to see someone of his stature dressed so plainly. But Snoop remained unbothered. He wasn't here for anyone's approval, just to enjoy a quiet meal away from the chaos of his celebrity life. He approached the host, who looked him up and down, seemingly confused by his attire. With a slight hesitation, the host asked, "May I take your coat, sir?" Snoop shook his head, smiling casually. He had no need for pretense. This was just him, Snoop Dogg in all his glory, yet dressed in a way that most would consider far from luxurious. The hostess led him to a table near the center of the room, where he sat down. His presence, despite the simplicity of his outfit, had an undeniable impact. People couldn't stop staring, some with admiration, others with judgment. It wasn't long before the waiter approached. The waiter, in his immaculate suit, greeted Snoop with a polite but condescending tone. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to our establishment. May I recommend our finest dishes? I'm sure you'll find something to your liking." Snoop simply nodded, still unfazed, and ordered a simple dish. Nothing extravagant, just what he felt like eating that night. But as the waiter turned to leave, he glanced back at Snoop, noticing his attire once again. A smirk formed on the waiter's face, and he muttered, "I suppose you didn't get the memo about dress code." His tone was dripping with sarcasm, and it didn't go unnoticed by Snoop. Snoop's calm expression didn't change, but something inside him sparked. He could feel the judgmental stares of the other diners, their eyes not just on him, but on his choice of clothes. For a moment, Snoop considered how easily people could dismiss someone based on what they wore, how they looked. He had been through this countless times. People were quick to judge, to underestimate, to label him. But this time, it was different. This time, Snoop wasn't going to let it slide. With a quiet confidence, he decided to challenge the waiter's remark, not with anger, but with the power of his presence. He was here to make a point, to show the world that appearances shouldn't define respect. He wasn't just a rapper, he was an icon, a cultural force, and he didn't need a designer suit to prove that. "Is there a problem with my outfit?" Snoop asked, his voice calm yet firm. The waiter, caught off guard, didn't know how to respond. He hesitated, unsure whether to apologize or double down on his comment. But Snoop wasn't having it. He wasn't just going to let the waiter's thinly veiled insult slide. "Let me ask you something," Snoop continued, his voice steady. "Do you judge everyone who walks in here based on how they look, or do you take a moment to see who they are, what they represent?" The waiter stood frozen, unsure of how to handle the situation. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. The diners around them watched, sensing the tension building. Snoop sat back in his chair, his eyes locked on the waiters. "I'm not here to make a scene, but I won't let you disrespect me based on my clothes. I'm Snoop Dogg, and I've earned my place in this world. Now, how about you treat me with the same respect you would anyone else in this room?" The waiter, realizing he was in over his head, stammered an apology, but it was too late. Snoop had already made his point. This wasn't just about fashion or dress codes, it was about respect. It was about challenging the preconceived notions people had about others, based solely on superficial things. Snoop leaned back in his chair, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He had made his statement, and he wasn't done yet. The night was far from over. The apology from the waiter was barely audible, but it didn't matter. Snoop Dogg had made his point loud and clear. The tension in the air was palpable, and everyone in the restaurant seemed to hold their breath. Snoop remained seated, calm and composed, as if he had just completed another successful show. The waiter, now visibly uncomfortable, tried to recover from the awkward situation. His voice was shaky when he spoke. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding, sir. It's just that our guests tend to follow a certain standard of attire. His words trailed off as he realized he had already said enough. Snoop didn't need any further explanation. He wasn't here for excuses. Around them, the murmurs of other diners began to die down, but the eyes remained. Snoop could feel their gaze, some curious, some judgmental, but all of them waiting to see what would happen next. The entire restaurant was on edge, but it wasn't just because of the altercation. It was because they were witnessing something they didn't expect. Snoop Dogg, an icon, a celebrity, standing up for himself, not with violence or anger, but with confidence and authority. Snoop looked around the room, taking in the faces of the other patrons. Some of them were avoiding eye contact, while others were watching him intently, as if waiting for him to do something, anything, to prove himself. But Snoop knew better. He didn't have to prove anything. His career, his life, his impact on culture spoke for itself. With a steady voice, Snoop finally responded. "Listen, I don't need your apology. I need you to understand something. You judge me based on the way I look, but I've been judged my entire life. People have always tried to tell me who I am because of what I wear, where I'm from, or the color of my skin. But I've built myself up from nothing, and I didn't need a fancy suit to do that." The waiter stood silent, his expression a mixture of regret and confusion. He didn't know what to say next, but Snoop wasn't finished yet. "I've been to places where people don't give you the time of day because of how you look, but I've made my way to the top without changing who I am. So, if you want to judge me for my outfit, then that's on you. But don't think for a second that I'm going to let it slide without saying something." At that moment, the manager of the restaurant, who had been observing from a distance, approached the table. His face was neutral, but there was a glimmer of concern in his eyes. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his tone polite but firm. Snoop looked up at him, unbothered. "There's no problem, unless you count the fact that your staff seems to think they can judge people based on their clothes. This isn't about the outfit, it's about respect." The manager, who clearly recognized Snoop, quickly nodded. "Of course, sir. I apologize for the behavior of our staff. That will not happen again." Snoop nodded back, satisfied, but still holding his ground. "I appreciate that, but it's more than just an apology. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else, no matter who they are or how they look." The manager glanced at the waiter, who was still standing by the table, and then back at Snoop. "We'll make sure our staff is properly trained and aware of our values moving forward," he promised. Snoop didn't respond immediately. He was aware that the manager's apology, while genuine, was a small step toward fixing a larger issue. The problem wasn't just with this one incident. It was part of a deeper societal issue of judgment, prejudice, and discrimination. People were too quick to assume, too quick to place others into boxes based on their appearance. Snoop could feel the weight of this understanding pressing on his shoulders, but he also felt a sense of clarity. He wasn't just here to challenge one person's ignorance. He was here to show the world that appearances were just that, appearances. They didn't define who someone was or what they were capable of. As the waiter turned to leave, Snoop leaned back in his chair, taking in the moment. He had made his statement, and he wasn't done yet. This wasn't just about this one restaurant. This was about a larger conversation, a conversation about respect, about dignity, and about the way society judges people based on superficial factors. The manager left the table, and the room returned to its previous rhythm, but there was something different in the air now. People had seen something real, something raw. Snoop Dogg had taken a stand, not in anger, but in quiet, unshakable confidence. And in doing so, he had reminded everyone that it wasn't the clothes that mattered. It was the person underneath them. As the manager retreated to attend to other matters in the restaurant, the air in the room seemed to shift. It was as if the entire atmosphere had been altered by the brief yet powerful exchange between Snoop and the waiter. People who had been silent observers now whispered among themselves, exchanging glances and mulling over what had just transpired. Some were still processing the fact that a celebrity like Snoop Dogg had not only stood up for himself, but had also turned the situation into a powerful statement about societal norms. Snoop, undisturbed by the attention, leaned back in his chair, letting out a slow breath. He wasn't just confronting the ignorance of a single person. He was making a statement to everyone around him. He was demonstrating in real time the power of confidence, self-respect, and the importance of standing up against prejudice. The waiter, now noticeably flustered, had retreated into the kitchen to compose himself, likely trying to figure out where he went wrong. The damage, however, had already been done, not just to his own ego, but to the culture of the restaurant. Snoop wasn't going to let this go unnoticed, and he wasn't about to accept the kind of treatment that so many others in society, especially those from marginalized communities, had faced for years. But Snoop wasn't angry. In fact, he was calm, cool, and collected. He wasn't fighting this battle with rage or bitterness. He was fighting it with grace and dignity. The way he had handled the situation made it clear that he wasn't just trying to make a point for himself. He was doing it for everyone who had ever been judged by their appearance or background. Snoop could feel the eyes of the room still on him. But instead of growing uncomfortable, he sat taller, more confident than ever. He had turned the moment into a lesson, an opportunity for everyone present to reflect on their own biases and assumptions. He wasn't just there for a meal, he was there to challenge the status quo, to show that people could be treated with respect no matter how they looked. Just then, the manager returned with a large, friendly smile, this time accompanied by a few other staff members. They stood at a respectful distance, almost as though they were waiting for Snoop to give the signal for what should happen next. "We've talked about it, and we want to make things right," the manager said earnestly. "We've made a mistake, and we understand that our behavior was inappropriate. We also want to assure you that your experience here will be different moving forward. You're always welcome here, Mr. Dogg." Snoop nodded, acknowledging the sincerity in the manager's voice. "I appreciate that. But it's not just about me. It's about everyone who comes through those doors. No one should feel like they're not good enough because of the way they dress or where they come from." The staff, now fully attentive, nodded in agreement, realizing the weight of the lesson Snoop was imparting. They had seen a side of the artist that they hadn't expected, the side of a person who wasn't just about the fame, the flashy outfits, or the persona. Snoop had shown them the power of respect and empathy, and in that moment, Snoop made another important point. It wasn't about whether or not he would continue dining at the restaurant. It was about making sure that the culture of judgment, exclusion, and superficial standards didn't persist. He'd already made an impact that went far beyond this single interaction. As he prepared to leave the table, Snoop smiled, standing up with an air of satisfaction. He had handled the situation not only with grace, but with the kind of insight that many people, especially those in positions of power, often lacked. "I'll be on my way," he said, his voice steady but with a trace of amusement. "But remember this, treat people with respect, no matter where they come from or how they look. The world will be a better place if you do." The manager and staff stood by the table as Snoop walked toward the door. the entire restaurant seemingly in his wake, as if they had just witnessed something larger than themselves. The encounter had changed the course of the day, leaving behind a powerful reminder. It's never the clothes that define a person. It's the respect we give them that truly matters. As Snoop Dogg stepped out of the restaurant, the sound of the door closing behind him felt symbolic. An ending, but also a new beginning. He had left an indelible mark on the staff, the manager, and even the people who had witnessed the situation unfold. Though the restaurant continued to hum with activity, something had changed in the air. It was as if everyone who had been there that day had learned something valuable, something they might carry with them for the rest of their lives. Snoop's actions had sparked a conversation that needed to happen. In the days that followed, the restaurant's management worked hard to ensure that their staff understood the importance of treating every customer with the utmost respect, regardless of how they were dressed or where they came from. They began offering training sessions on diversity and inclusion, making it clear that no one should ever feel judged or belittled based on their appearance. The waiter who had initially made the insulting comment was given the opportunity to apologize to Snoop privately, an act that he later admitted helped him understand the weight of his words. But the impact didn't stop there. News outlets caught wind of the incident, and soon Snoop Dogg's simple yet powerful stand against discrimination became a viral story. People from all walks of life shared their thoughts, their own experiences with judgment and bias, and the story sparked a nationwide conversation about the importance of respect, equality, and empathy. Many praised Snoop for his calm and composed demeanor in the face of disrespect, seeing it as a model for how to confront prejudice without resorting to anger or hostility. He had shown the world that it wasn't necessary to escalate situations with violence or rage. Sometimes the most effective response is one of grace and dignity. Snoop didn't stop there. He took to social media, sharing his experience with his millions of followers, encouraging them to stand up for themselves and for others in moments of injustice. His message was clear. Change starts with us. It starts with the everyday actions we take, the way we treat others, and the way we choose to challenge the biases that exist in our society. In the weeks that followed, the restaurant received an outpouring of support from customers who appreciated the way Snoop had handled the situation and how the establishment had worked to make things right. What was once a tense and awkward moment had transformed into a story of growth and learning for both the restaurant and the larger community. It wasn't just about Snoop Dogg. It was about a collective effort to make the world a better place, one interaction at a time. Snoop had never set out to be a hero, but in a way, that's exactly what he became. Not because he fought for justice in a grand, dramatic way, but because he used his platform, his status, and his voice to make a simple yet profound statement. Respect should never be conditional. As he reflected on the events, Snoop smiled to himself. He didn't need the accolades or the attention. He didn't need the media coverage or the praise. What mattered was that he had inspired change, and that was enough for him. The legacy of that day would live on, not just in the hearts of the people who witnessed the incident, but in the culture of the restaurant that had learned, thanks to Snoop, the true value of kindness and respect. The world might be a tough place, but as long as people like Snoop Dogg continued to stand up for what was right, there was hope for a better, more compassionate future. And as Snoop drove away from the restaurant that day, he couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. It was the kind of peace that comes with knowing that even the smallest of actions could ripple outward and change the course of someone's life for the better. The lesson had been learned, the change had begun. And Snoop Dogg had done more than just speak out against injustice. He had made sure that his actions spoke louder than any words ever could. Thank you for watching till the end video. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories.